they can catch up with us. Welcome everybody to today's Ask the FICSA Expert session on the review of the hardship duty stations and how that process is carried out within the UN Common System. We're very lucky to have with us today Alexander Martynenko from WHO Euro, who's also the FICSA Executive Committee representative for field issues. And he is joined also by Véronique Alain, who has been a long-standing FICSA member and has been dealing with field issues and specifically hardship classification for many years on behalf of FICSA members. So today, Sasha is going to give a brief, it's quite a dense presentation on what that process is, how our hardship, how our duty stations classified according to hardship, and what that implies, for staff and what you have to do. For FICSA staff representatives who are online, you will have received today a message from the FICSA Secretariat about the annual review of hardship duty stations. This year it's specifically, I would say the majority, if not all, but the absolute majority is for African duty stations, which is why last week we had this presentation in French by Vero, and we have a recording of that session from last week as well. Should you need to have that, should you prefer to hear the session in French. Hi, Anthony, nice to see you. Everybody else, I'm saying hello to everybody at once. Hi. I'm saying hello to everybody at once. I'm also informing you that Mary-Paul here at the Secretariat has started recording the session. And it's purely for, well, it will be used for FICSA, the benefit of FICSA members, so that they can review this if and when they need to do that. Like I said as well, we just sent out a message today from Sasha specifying to our membership exactly what the annual review entails and how FICSA can help. So I'm going to, without further ado, as I'm afraid I have to leave the office very soon, I'm going to pass the microphone to Sasha. Thank you so much for being with us, and I wish you a good session. Thanks, Sasha. Bye.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I am just sharing my screen with the rest of the team, and once it's available, if somebody could please flag whether you can see the content, I can start immediately, given that the presentation is quite intense.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, dear colleagues from all over the world. Very happy to see you joining for this quite informatively dense session about a very important piece of work that the Commission is doing on an annual basis, and that has direct impact to all of the staff who are in the category of internationally recruited staff members. Of course, if we have colleagues here who are for the time being locally recruited staff members, you're welcome to stay with us, and we hope that this will become very useful once you have transitioned from a locally recruited to internationally recruited staff member, as this information is likely to impact very much the choice where you work, but also what benefits you what benefits you have. The session is quite intense, and I'll try to run it as quickly as possible, leaving some time for Q&A. Should there be no time for Q&A, given that we have quite limited time, FICSA has envisaged several modalities whereby we can have small group one-on-one sessions to address any outstanding issues that you may have on this subject, particularly as you fill out the questionnaire for this exercise, or if you may have some questions next year when your region is being reviewed by the Commission. So before we go further, let's have a look at the basic of the things, and that's to start that the things which are considered for one person are definitely not considered the same for the other person. Here's the example of what constitutes to be a family duty station in different regions. It may totally be different, and one living condition that may be family conducive may be totally different for other staff members who may reside in that duty station and may not have the same type of benefits because of the various reasons. Another thing is that for many of us, we have the image that some of the duty stations, like pictured here, for instance, are very nice to go to. I'm sorry, can I please ask everybody to mute? Excuse me, can you please mute yourself? Thank you very much. So for many of us, some duty stations may appeal to be more interesting, like on the picture, thinking that this is how the life will look like. But in reality, if you go there, this is basically how the true living conditions of that particular duty station may look like. So that's why it is very important to complete this exercise, to have a reality check of knowing where we are going and where we are sending our staff members. A couple of basics, some of us know these basics, some of us are not, so just to bring us everybody on the same level. There will be 4 main terms that we will be using throughout this session today that I would like all of us to have the common understanding. One is the so much famous abbreviation ICIC, or sometimes referred as the Commission. So this is the UN body that is charged by the GA to regulate and coordinate the conditions of serving for the UN Common System staff. So this is the body that is doing all of the decisions and recommendations in terms of the benefits, entitlements, salaries. They are basically in the driving seat to define what we as the international civil servants at the end receive from the system as the compensation for our service. The second term is TWG, or so-called tripartite working group. It's a very important element of this exercise. It's basically the working group, which consists of 3 blocks: the ICIC staff, the UN entities, and what is the most important, the representatives of all 3 staff federations. FICSA is a part of that working group, and this working group reviews the results of the questionnaire and then makes recommendation to the chair of the commission, who eventually decides on the final designation of the classification of a duty station. So that's where we, as the FICSA members and as a FICSA secretariat, have a voice to ensure that the classification is accurately capturing and reflecting the realities of the life and work of a particular duty station. The third one is the term questionnaire, and that's what I would like, please, to not confuse with the term survey, because in the work that the Commission does, there are so many different surveys, questionnaires, assessments, and so on and so forth. And just to keep it sort of straight and clear for all, this particular exercise is classified by the Commission as the questionnaire. So we'll be using it throughout the presentation, and in your deliberations with your colleagues, please use this term because it really captures accurately what it stands for. And it stands for basically a tool which is used by the Commission to understand how difficult it is to live in a particular duty station, and then to determine what classification to assign to that duty station. And finally, what do we mean by hardship? So hardship, as defined by the Commission, is a complex sum of circumstances and conditions that internationally recruited staff members are subject to in terms of their life and work vis-a-vis discomfort, deprivation, and difficulties. And here I would like once again to emphasize that we are looking at 2 critical elements. First of all, it's for internationally recruited staff members. Therefore, it is critically important that internationally recruited staff members complete this exercise. Secondly, it's to remember that it is about work and life. It's not only how difficult it is to work there, but also how difficult it is to live in that particular duty station. So why do we all have to fill out this questionnaire, and why does the Commission want to know to which extent it is what it is in those duty stations? Well, so there are 4 points to consider. The first one is, by doing this questionnaire, the Commission assesses the hardship situation in that particular duty station. So they need to know, of all of the duty stations that the UN staff serve, and that's more than, I believe, 600 or more, each of that duty station represents a unique environment of work and life. So they need to know to which extent it is difficult or not to live and work in that duty station. Then, on the basis of that assessment, they assign a particular classification of a duty station. That's a process that is designed by specific methodology that the Commission has developed for this purpose. The third point is that once you assign a particular classification of a duty station, it has a direct impact in terms of whether you get a hardship allowance or whether you don't. And of course, the hardship allowance is meant to, first of all, incentivize you to move there, and second of all, is to offset for all of those discomfort, deprivation, and hardship conditions that staff members are subject to living in that duty station. And the fourth element, of course, which is indirect, but still linked to this to the results of the questionnaire, is that the classification of a duty station also determines how frequently you would go for home leave, whether you would receive a danger pay or not. So the questionnaire alone defines at least 3 critical elements: whether you get your annual hardship allowance or not, whether you go for home leave 12 months or 24 months, or whether you are getting or not danger pay. The first 2 tasks are done based on the information from the duty station. So everybody who is serving in the duty stations outside the headquarters is responsible for providing this information based on your duties as an international civil servant, and to help the Commission define how difficult it is to live there. The second component is basically based on the methodology that the Commission defined, and this is where we also have quite a bit of a role to play in the final result. Now, when we go to the current classification, in case you're interested to know which classification your duty station is, should you perhaps moved just a few weeks ago, or maybe this wasn't of an interest for you. Once we share this presentation, you may click in the PDF on this particular link, and you will get to the most recent list, a PDF list that the Commission published, and you can find your particular duty station. It contains all duty stations where international recruited staff members currently serve. Overall, there are 6 classifications of duty station. The first block, it's what is called H and A duty stations. And the second block is the 4 duty stations classified B, C, D, and E. And basically H and A duty stations, these are classified as good, easy to live, no hardship duty stations. They are by default headquarters, similarly designated duty stations, and all duty stations in the EU countries. So that's H duty station. These duty stations do not fill out the questionnaire. So if you're working in one of those duty stations, you will not receive this questionnaire. And if you work in one of the duty stations, which is classified A, B, C, D, or E, you will receive on a regular basis, at least once every 3 years, a questionnaire to fill out to determine whether you are still an A duty station or whether you need to be downgraded because of the various conditions. As a rule, A would be the capitals or the cities where basically life is more or less okay. And then if you go down the alphabet, it gets worse and worse. So as I mentioned, the first subset doesn't get hardship allowance. The second subset gets hardship allowance. And in this picture, you may see just a selection of some of the duty stations. Of course, the list is not comprehensive in here. So a couple of basic sort of facts in the summary about the classification. It is done once every 3 years. So each duty station will go through its mandatory classification once every 3 years. However, we also understand that we live in a quite turbulent world, so there may be what is called out of cycle classifications, and that can be a case, for instance, if there is suddenly an active war starting, a conflict, a coup d'etat, huge explosion of the nuclear weapons, and so on and so forth. So the Commission has envisaged that there is a methodology and a way to request out-of-cycle classification, as well as there is what is called temporary classification. So these are the classifications which you normally do if you plan to put somebody in a duty station where for the time being there is no international recruited staff members. As I mentioned, you can always request to review the assigned classification if there was a sudden and considerable change in the conditions of life and work. That this should go to the chair of the commission. The chair will always review and decide whether the request is feasible or not. The recommendations for a particular classification are done by this working group, and it is very important to highlight that staff federations play a critical role in advising the committee on the realities of the work and life, on perhaps feedback of the people who actually went there recently or who have been stationed there for some time. The annual allowance that staff who are based in B, C, D, or E duty stations will be based on the staff grade. As of 2020, the rates are as they are depicted here. These rates are reviewed normally every 2 years. The Commission did review the rates in August 2022 and recommended a slight increase in November 2022. However, the fifth committee overruled that decision and did not agree with the ICIC recommendation. So for the time being, we are operating with 2020 rates. However, we are cognizant of the situation and will be engaging with the discussion with the Commission to make sure that these rates are accurately updated, given there's an inflation and so on and so forth. So just to provide you here briefly the schedule of the annual reviews, and here I'm making an emphasis on annual reviews. So the reviews which go every 3 years, they are planned, assuming nothing terrible happens, life goes normally. So these are the regions which go once every 3 years. It's important to note that the ICIC classification of the countries belonging to a region may be different from the classifications of your respective organizations. I'll give you an example from my organization, from WHO. Some of the countries which are classified by the Commission to belong to the Africa region are actually a part of the Eastern Mediterranean region for WHO. I would imagine that in some other agencies, there may be a similar way for other duty stations globally. So it is also quite important to know when your cycle comes based on the ICIC classification of the region rather than on the region of classification of the region according to the rules and regulations of your respective UN agency. As you can see, the cycle goes every 3 years, and I'm sure that FICSA is very much committed to be present on all of these reviews as long as we all live on this beautiful planet. So how does the classification work? A very straightforward and a very simple way. Periodically, normally in July, the Commission will send a request to the resident coordinator to fill out that survey. Then the resident coordinator is supposed to, and that's what I'm making the emphasis, is supposed to contact the UN country team, normally the heads of the UN agencies or the delegated authorities, to prepare feedback to that questionnaire. The UNCT will convene a few times, ideally create a small working group to provide feedback to that questionnaire, and then return one consolidated questionnaire back to the resident coordinator. So it doesn't mean that, for instance, UNFPA, UNICEF, WHO, UNDP all fill out completely the entire questionnaire. No, you basically decide based on the comparative advantage of each organization who can provide better feedback. If UNDP can provide info on housing, great, then maybe WHO doesn't need even to touch that section of the questionnaire. If WHO has plenty of information about environment, great, then the UNEP can concentrate on something else. But the highlight here is that to provide one consolidated response of the entire UNCT. Then the resident coordinator, having reviewed the submissions, will make the final version of the document and will return that back to the Commission. The Commission, together with the UN entities and the Staff Federation, so that tripartite working group, will review the results and will make recommendations. So, and that's important to highlight that the working group does not make a decision. It merely makes recommendations based on the information that is provided in the questionnaire, as well as some additional feedback that I will outline a bit later. Then the working group sends it to the chair of the commission, who will then make the final decision, who will promulgate the results, and then those results will be implemented by the respective UN agencies who participate in the common system. So basically, it starts with the feedback from the UNCT and it goes back to the impact that the UNCT will receive based on the feedback that they provide, given that the classification that their duty station is assigned largely depends on how well the questionnaire is filled out, how detailed the responses are provided. So now the actual questionnaire itself, and this is where we are looking at a very interesting piece of work, because for the time being, it's still paper-based. It is not an online version. Of course, you can download it, but the actual work is done in a Word document that is then compiled, printed, signed, scanned, and sent. So we are still most probably in 2010, 2012, based on the header from the screenshot. But this is for the time being what we are operating. We've been working with the Commission to explore the options of having the online tool, but for various reasons that work hasn't progressed so far, but at least doc file is what we are working right now. Like I mentioned, it's one questionnaire per duty station. Of course, if we take a country where there are several duty stations, then then for each of the duty station, one independent questionnaire needs to be submitted. It's not per country, it's per duty station. If it happens that in a country there is one duty station, then it's one. If it happens that there are 4 duty stations in one country, then there should be 4 questionnaires submitted by the RC office. The questionnaire responses come from all resident UN entities. And so this is also quite important. If some of the UN entities are not physically present in a duty station and may perform work from the headquarters, regional office, and so on and so forth, they do not fill out the questionnaire because the questionnaire needs to capture the conditions of life and work of the IPs who are based in that particular duty station. The third element, it is, and I've mentioned one more time here, it's only for the international staff members. Locally recruited staff members should not fill out this questionnaire. They should not be asked by the respective colleagues to fill out, because then the information may be skewed, because the living conditions and the quality of life and the access to resources, if you are an international recruit staff member, is different than your local recruit staff members. It's not a question of why, it's how the rules have been stated, and we need to follow the rules and the mandate that was agreed by the members of the United Nations. It's very detailed. It has 130 questions. Some of the questions are pretty straightforward, yes, no. Some of the questions will require elaboration, and we will go through each of the sections to provide you an overview of how it looks like and what possible tips you can have in your mind when you fill out those questionnaires to provide as much information for the Commission as possible. And overall, we can say that this whole questionnaire consists of 6 mini blocks, so 6 thematic areas that will define totally what duties, what classification and what designation a duty station will receive. So now let's go into these 6 factors of the hardship, as the Commission calls them. And they are basically to capture quite range of factors that impact the discomfort, the isolation, the depreciation of life of a staff member who is based in a duty station. One is climate and environment. The second one is isolation and social and physical isolation. The third one is housing matters. The fourth is in relation to the local conditions. The fifth one is about the health. And the sixth one is about the security and safety. The first four ones, these are collected from all international recruit staff members of that particular duty station. So all agencies should be providing feedback. Again, based on your comparative advantage, you're not supposed to provide feedback to all of the sections, but you decide where you can provide useful information that the Commission can relate to and make use of. The section on health is normally filled out by WHO representative or UN examining physician of a duty station. That's what the Commission writes. However, from the experience of somebody who has filled out these questionnaires and an experience based from other colleagues who have been working in this area for quite a while, we strongly suggest that this particular section is filled out jointly by WHO and the UN examining physician for simple one reason. In many duty stations, UN examining physician will be a locally recruited staff member who may not have full information about the functioning of the health systems, about the dysfunctionality, about the quality of services, and about any other aspects that actually WHO may have. Another reason to consider WHO as sort of the lead in doing this is the WHO presence in the countries, and I will mention that later. The security section is being filled out by the DSS. So that's, if you are not working for the DSS, you will not necessarily provide feedback to that. It's normally done by that agency. Now, going to the health component, why to use also WHO? Sorry. We have physical presence in 150 countries. So let's say 2/3 of the countries are covered where we have presence. And that means that we have at least one or two staff members who have been working there, who know the situation, who know how to provide the assessment of the performance of the health systems, of the quality of services, and how to accurately capture all of the weaknesses and strength of the health system. So while the UN examining physician may capture the availability of a particular doctor, WHO may actually capture the level of education, the level of quality of the service of that particular service that is being provided. So our recommendation here is please do liaise with a WHO colleague in a duty station and ask for a collaboration to fill that particular survey, that questionnaire together. WHO is there to provide you support on these matters and actually is quite the best position to do so. Another reason why health and security are so important is because when reviewing the responses, these two areas play a very important role. And in our experience of having sat in the work of the tripartite working group, unfortunately, the health component of the questionnaire seems to be the least completed, which quite substantially skews the overall rating that then a duty station is provided. If you don't provide information, the Commission assumes everything is good, therefore consequences follow from that. Now, a couple of words about sort of high-level 5 factors of success to properly fill out that questionnaire. We all assume that, if there is service available, that's great. And that's what the Commission also will start with, this assumption. Oh, there's a hospital available. Great, wonderful. Health component not important. But what is important to mention here is that the availability of a service at a particular duty station doesn't mean that it's qualitative, as depicted in this picture. There's a bridge, but whether it's functional for the purpose it was built, well, quite a rhetorical question. The second one is, if you don't provide information, the Commission assumes that all is good. And this is the quotation, which is on your right side. Basically, if you don't speak, the Commission assumes that you agreed with its assumption that everything is running smooth, and they move on to the next duty station. Photos and facts are your best evidence. Of course, when you can provide clear pictures. That's great. If you can't, there is no expectations. But if at some point you are based in a duty station and you will be based there for 2, 3, 4 years, and in your respective technical area, you see clear deficiencies, health system, food quality, safety of roads, infrastructure, air quality, location of shops, you name it. Take a picture. It's always easier to convince that a service is not available rather than to not provide any picture at all. But again, it's not a mandatory thing. It always helps also for us as human beings, given that we are all quite visual in our understanding of the facts. The fifth one is sharing and is caring. And this is quite important because some of us who may be, for instance, considering moving to the Maldives, and that's a very random example, very hypothetical example, are thinking, oh, I'm going to be spending great time on the beaches and so on and so forth. And when you get to the Maldives, for instance, you may find yourself in totally different reality than those that if you go there for 5 days. Or if you decide to go to Bangkok and you think, oh, it's going to be great food, massage, and so on and so forth, but then you find yourself that no, I may be having issues in accessing the quality dental care. So informing the future potential staff who may be considering move to a duty station is also a good way for us to ensure that if you are not ready to move to a duty station of a category C and below, then of course you will not choose of category C and below. It's a good investment to inform our colleagues who may have certain limitations because of various reasons not to move to a particular duty station with particular set of hardships. And the fifth one is basically try to become the chair of the ICRC for 1 day and see how would you rate your duty station if you had never lived there and all you have is normally 40 minutes of a discussion. Most probably you have never traveled to that duty station. In most cases, you've never heard of that duty station. You will never go there most probably, and most probably you'll hear about the duty station once every 3 years. So try to put yourself into the shoes of the commission and the shoes of the working group to understand how much needs to be informed and what needs to be informed to draw a picture of how it is to live and work in that particular duty station. So now let's do a bit of a deep dive to some of these hardship levels that I have outlined. We'll start with climate and environment, and I'll be providing you very brief suggestions on what can be captured in your assessment and how it can be done. But of course, you're more than invited to elaborate more to match the reality of your duty station. So for the climate and environment, I would like to draw your attention first of all to the first question, which says that, you know, the Commission itself collects information on the humidity and so on and so forth, so that you don't really need to spend time and saying, oh, we have 200 rainy days per year. They will know that. What you also need to provide is question 13. So basically, information that the Commission may not know, but you know from being there. For instance, it's so humid there that my leather clothes or my suit, I need to throw it away once every 2 months because it's unbearably humid and the cottons get deteriorated. Or that the running water is so of a bad quality, or that we don't have any water in the clean water in the lake. So something that you can provide in addition to what is in the Commission normally collects from question 10 is your chance to highlight the difficulty of the duty station. Couple of things also. What is the level of the air pollution? Are there any significant natural disasters? Any extreme pollution episodes? Was there the high spillover of liquid ammonia last week that now is going to completely destroy the way that the environment is functioning in that particular duty station? So all of the things that are critically impacting your quality of life and work should be mentioned. On the social and physical isolation, here again, also for each of the sections, the Commission provides at the introduction of that questionnaire short guidance. And here, so basically it is clearly specified that only IPs, internationally recruited staff members, not the locally recruited staff members, should be providing, and this questionnaire should be responded by people who have been assigned there for at least 1 year. So if you go there once every 2 weeks and you stay 5 days, most probably you won't be able to accurately capture to which extent you are social and physically isolated. Here, what you might really consider, and this is particularly relevant for our colleagues from Africa, is to which extent the duty station where you are serving well connected to major transit airport hubs, for instance. How reliable are the services? Whether the family members that you would like to bring along with you, even if it's classified as a family duty station, can they get work visas? Can they get in general entry visas? And if they get entry visas, how difficult it is for them to find any employment opportunity, whether it is paid or non-paid opportunity, how you can balance your work-life dichotomy, whether you have cinemas, shops, theaters, swimming pools, playgrounds, availability of kindergartens, basically everything what has direct impact on your social and physical well-being. One of the things which I really would like to mention here is particularly for the proposed question 1 and 2, and that comes from my personal experience, is the fact that you have flights doesn't mean that you're still well connected to the world. And in my case, I have plenty of flights, but they all go to one particular city, and then that city is not an internationally connected city, which requires that I take yet another flight before I can reach a transport hub, and then I can connect to other things. So it's really worth critically reflecting how is it easy for you to disconnect from a duty station where you're currently based to improve your social and physical well-being. Housing, also pretty straightforward. The same applies international recruit staff members who are there for 1 year or longer. And here you might want to have a look whether it is easy for you to rent private houses, whether you have reliable services or whether there are power cuts. What about the security issues? And quite important, how is it for you to find such a housing where you can easily move between the house and the rest of the duty station, whether it is your work, whether it is gym, so to which extent it is a mobile duty station. Finally, one of the most important elements of this particular assessment, it's the health. And health actually will consist of the 2 subsets. The one is filled out by either WHO rep or UN staff physician. Here, we really recommend that both fill out and then provide one consolidated feedback to provide as much information both on the availability and the quality of services. There are 40 questions dedicated to health. So you can see that out of 130 questions, 30% are dedicated to health. So that tells you about the importance and the weight of this particular factor in defining the final classification. This is the only part where the feedback is sought from the staff member, international staff member, as well as from their family members who are physically present there. That again highlights the importance of this particular survey, this particular section of the questionnaire. What is also important to notice is that not only does the UN or WHO provide feedback to this particular section, when the discussions about the conditions of life and work from the health perspective take place, the Commission also invites feedback from the UN doctor who is sitting in New York. And here also, we would like to highlight that this is one person covering all duty stations globally. So of course, we can't expect one person sitting in New York knowing all of the nitty-gritty about what the quality and the availability of health services in Cape Town is, for instance. So that's why it is very important to provide information as detailed as possible on the health sector, because if there is no, the Commission will go by the summary from the UN doctor sitting in New York, and normally this summary will be based on very limited research that this person will have conducted, either through quickly doing the Google search or any other publicly available documents, whether they are updated or not. That is not taken into consideration. So that's why it is very important to inform the Commission and the doctor of the real conditions, particularly in relation to health. And the FICSA, which is the member of this working group, can advocate for the opinion as expressed by the UN doctor to be not taken into account, and actually to take the account of the opinion provided by the staff via the questionnaire, given that they are actually based in that particular duty station. Now, as I've mentioned, it's quite a detailed thing, and 4 things that you may wish to concentrate while you fill out these questions is not only providing yes and no, but if you provide yes, you may also elaborate on the qualitative aspect of that yes. So what is the quality of healthcare? Do you have available doctors of all specializations that you have? Or maybe you have pediatricians who can only deal with adults. You don't have any, orthopedists who can deal only with adults. You don't have orthopedists who can deal with children trauma, for instance. That impacts the quality of life and work of you and your recognized family members. How are the quality of the medical products? Are there any reports of the counterfeit medicines, which may not be even reported to the UN doctor, but you, who are physically based in the duty station, know? Whether there are any medevacs, and here it is quite also important to notice that the Commission is not so much interested about in the number of the medevacs, but of the reason of the medevacs. And if you provide that there were 5 medevacs in the last year, well, okay, medevacs happen. So what? Maybe the patient had a very ultra rare condition that wouldn't be even treatable in an A duty station, can only be treated, let's say, in Geneva or in New York. So that doesn't matter much. What the Commission is interested is about the reason for the medevac. Is it because there were no places available in the hospital? Whether because the trainings were not sufficient? Whether because there is not regular supply of power cards to provide opportunity to operate the patient? So it's not how many, it's why those medevacs took place. A couple also of things to guide you when filling out that question, for instance, is how reliable are the tests that you would run in a healthcare facility? Do professionals actually possess the right skills and knowledge, or whether they do those periodic continuous trainings, but they actually don't improve their knowledge and skills? So that's one of the things which you can refer when filling out this questionnaire. We still have 15 more minutes, so I'll provide you one last slide, and then I'm happy to answer any question that you may have in terms of the resources that FICSA has to support you in doing that. So last week, the Commission sent the communication to all of the resident coordinators in Africa, announcing the launch of these mandatory exercise for the duty stations which belong to the African region as defined by the Commission. The deadline for submitting the completed questionnaire is the 15th of August, so we still have about 1 month. And then sometime in November, the Commission will convene in the format of the working group to review the results, make recommendations to the chair, and then the chair will make the final decision. As you fill out this questionnaire, the first point, of course, would be to go to the Civil Service Commission webpage and actually go and click on the Mobility and Hardship section under the Data and Reports to download the actual questionnaire, just to get yourself acquainted with this, to see how the questions are structured, and to think where you, as a member of a particular UN agency, can provide valuable and useful feedback to support the informing of the Commission about the quality of life and work in your particular duty station. The second stop, where you can find quite a lot of useful information, is the FICSA webpage. So we have published a document which contains 20 frequently asked questions about this questionnaire. It is available on the FICSA webpage in the section topics and then field issues, I believe. Anyway, these are hyperlinked. These FAQs are available both in English and in French. And the last 5 questions in the FAQs actually provide you practical tips and guidance on how to fill out some of the sections of the questionnaire. The final piece that we have also developed as the FICSA for its members is the opportunity to have smaller one-on-one coaching sessions, either with me or with other colleagues who have been working on this between now and the 10th of August, to guide you on what to highlight, what not to highlight. If you're interested in having these sessions, please contact FICSA Secretariat, and then we can agree on a time slot and date. I just want to sort of mention here that here we are not going to review your results and say, hey, they're good, they're not. We are here to support you in addressing any of the questions, as much, of course, as we can guide. The final responsibility with completing the questionnaire lies within the UN resident coordinator, who submits one consolidated question. Of course, we should be working with our colleagues throughout the system and providing as much feedback in a constructive and collaborative manner. We will provide any guidance based on our experience, based on our knowledge of the system, on our experience of filling this questionnaire in past. But also please remember that it is your engagement with the UN Resident Coordinator Office that ultimately will result in a piece that will be reviewed by the working group and decided on by the chair of the Commission. On this end, I would like to conclude my presentation. We have about 10 minutes before we conclude. So if there are any other questions that you may have, I'm happy to address and happy to support as much as I can. Thank you very much. And over to the Secretariat, please.
Well done, Sasha.
Thank you very much. I know it's quite a lot of information here, so most probably it's still need to be digested. From the FICSA Secretariat, I believe it's Irvan who's moderating this, or am I assigning duties on a voluntary basis?
Thank you, Sasha. I see one question in the chat. It says, can I please know why local staff and international staff receive different levels, with different amounts in danger pay?
Understood. So again, this session is really not about the danger pay. Danger pay is defined through a different methodology. The different amounts, to my understanding, are decided based on the decision that was taken by the General Assembly. So with respect to this, it's not FICSA who decides. It's not the ICIC who decide. The methodology was developed and the methodology was approved. Of course, we understand that, for instance, a locally recruited staff member based in Afghanistan is by no means subject to less of a danger than an international recruited staff member. However, I cannot really comment on the methodology. I wasn't the one who developed it and I wasn't the one who endorsed it. That's the reality that we all need to work together to ensure the fair and equitable access to all of these benefits. But for the time being, that's what we operate in our imperfect world. Tonya, please, I see that you raise your hand.
Exactly. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. So obviously we have a huge list that we're going to go through. And we're lucky in one country, Djibouti, where we have the WR is actually the resident coordinator. So WHO is going to be in charge of that. But on the other countries, we have a serious situation, particularly Egypt. I wrote to UNDP, who's the head of the LSC, and they said it's actually with the resident coordinator, like you said. So we wrote to the resident coordinator, still waiting, and the resident coordinator did not get in touch with anybody so far. Now, how do we deal with this situation? We have been there before. Yes, we are going to find ways to get around it, but this is really not okay. And we had made a recommendation in the FICSA Council that we need to be part of this. Now, most places, WHO, at least in our region, we are a big part of the footprint. In most of the countries that you have there in that list, we are at least 40% of the footprint, with the exception of maybe Djibouti City. That's it. But everywhere else, so why are we not in charge of these things like we are in the LSSC? So that's the first thing that I have. And the second question is, you said that there is ones that are under watch. Now, under watch, does that mean that they're going to have to do this questionnaire? Or do we need to, do we just wait and see if they are going to go forward? Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tonya. So,
and sorry, one more thing, Sasha. Yes, we are definitely, like I said in my email, we definitely want individual sessions with you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Over to you.
So on the matter of the UNRC, unfortunately, this is still the imperfection of the RC system that is coming into being after being the UNDP-driven system. My only recommendation that I can share with you based on my experience, if you have a UNRC that is not inclusive, continue writing, continue documenting, continue informing. But if there is no progress for this time, for the next time, it is definitely worth bringing to the attention of your regional director or the executive management so that they can later on inform through appropriate channels at the level of the Secretary General to advise. Now, we as FICSA do not have the say in the way that the Commission disseminates these emails. In the council that was in Valencia this year, we agreed that we will work with the Commission so that the Commission changes the email that it sends to highlight the importance of including all of the agencies, maybe down to the fact that, even CCing the head of the agencies. But of course, to CC every single head of the agency will be quite unrealistic even to maintain that list. We haven't succeeded much on that because very much like the rest of the UN system, the changes don't take place overnight. However, we did inform the Commission about such of the things. FICSA president and the Secretariat actually engaged with the chair of the Commission, and they informed about these different types of the behaviors of RC, particularly as they relate to this questionnaire. And they flagged that this needs to change because it cannot stay that way. We are keeping this under our attention, but again, this is not something that unfortunately we can change overnight. However, the issue is already at the level of the IC, of the Commission. So hopefully as we move ahead, that this process will be much more streamlined. The third question that you mentioned, I'm sorry, I must have forgotten, Tonya.
It's about the email that you sent, the ones that are under watch.
Got it. So under watch. So in general, under watch, it's not really sort of a special type of one of the three reviews that is done. Normally the Commission has a mandatory review once every 3 years, out of cycle, which is just happening because the mandatory review couldn't assign a fixed sort of classification for 3 years, or a temporary, which is when you don't have colleagues in the duty station, it's a new duty station. So the security watch, it's something that the Commission has developed based on the results of the assessment when the duty station submitted its original survey, and when the security concerns were flagged by DSS as potentially involving or involving now. The list is managed by the Commission based on the guidance from the DSS in New York, who receives the guidance from the local DSS. And one piece of intelligence that we would like to share with you based on our engagement with the Commission is that the DSS in New York will not react unless the local DSS has informed the DSS in New York of security developments. So at the end of the day, it again boils down to the ultimate responsibility of us based in a particular duty station to monitor what's happening, to inform local DSS, down to the point that you are more than welcome to CC your resident coordinator, your local security colleagues from your organization, requesting them and local DSS to inform the DSS in New York about the developments to allow for the Commission to put the duty station on a security watch. So it's a quite cumbersome and bureaucratic process, but it all starts with us in a duty station, informing local DSS, who informs DSS in New York, who then goes to the Commission. The process is not perfect, but given that we have so many duty stations, this was the most straightforward process, even if it's not really straightforward in terms of its pattern. Iran, please.
Thank you, Sasha and Tonya. Just to add on the UNRC's effectiveness, this is also an area that FICSA is working with UNDCO in New York. This is the department that takes care of all the UNRC's office across the world. So Tanya has highlighted to them that we've seen gaps in a lot of duty stations where the UNRC is not clear about their role in local salary survey, in cost of living survey, hardship classification survey. So this is an ongoing dialogue that FICSA is continuing with DCO. And I think we take note that you're mentioning that this is happening in Egypt. I think what recently was a problem in Manila where they were not sure about the cost of living survey and so on. So we flagged this up to DCO, and DCO goes back to the RCs and make sure they know their role. And their role is not to lead that survey itself. The UNRC, the resident coordinator, coordinates in the duty station. And it could be that in the coordination, they see that WHO has more resources or FAO has more resources or more expertise. And those are the people assigned to help or to lead that questionnaire. But they have to play that leadership role or that coordination role on the duty station. And FICSA will continue to flag this up when anytime there's an issue in the duty station. Thank you.
So we are coming almost to the end of the time that was allocated to us. Our colleagues from the FICSA Secretariat will of course share this presentation. And once again, I would like to reiterate the available tools that are here to support you in filling out this questionnaire. It's the FICSA webpage with Q&As. It's this presentation. It's also the recording in French if you wish, and feel more comfortable to do this in French. And it's the individual sessions that the colleagues from the Secretariat are happy to schedule with us to guide you on filling this out and to making sure that we accurately capture all the information. The methodology is not going away. This is how the Commission is going to be working in the foreseeable future. So the more we have people who are knowledgeable in how to do that as we move across the world, the better we are going to have the representation and the designation of duty stations. Vero?
Sasha, yeah, I see that in the chat, there's a colleague who has written, but when UNDSS brief the staff, it sounds sometimes scary. So we hope that UNDSS must be giving the same picture to New York as well.
Thank you.
And then
That's
Tonya has another, and then we reply to this, and then after that, Tonya has another question in the chat, okay?
Okay, yes. So for the DSS component, again, I cannot, of course, comment to every single DSS statement that is being made. We just outlined to you the way that it is structured operationally within the DSS and the Commission, and to provide you this intelligence so that you can use your local DSS in the way that they communicate. In our engagement in that working group where we have the staff from the UN DSS in New York reporting to us, they primarily would touch only on the high-level messages. And the high-level messages, of course, come from the feedback that they receive from the local DSS colleagues. If the local DSS colleagues provide useful information and reliable information in the questionnaire, then the presentation that is done by DSS in New York will not even touch those issues, because they already will have said that local DSS provided accurate information. It's very dangerous. It's categorized as D dangerous or as E dangerous, have nothing to say. And then we can, or can be the other way. DSS may say, oh, it's all rosy and pink. And then the staff federation who's participating in this, in the work of the working group will say, sorry, let's have a look, let's have a reality check. Where do you base your information? Our experience is different. And then you start discussions. Of course, ideally, this shouldn't happen. Every UN agency should be providing candid and professional response that accurately captures the reality of the situation. But then again, at the end of the day, the ultimate responsibility, as much as it may sound maybe very burdening, relies on each and every of us. And we use the comparative advantage of our knowledge, of our skills, of our experience to ensure that what is being communicated to the Commission is correct, accurate, and informative. There was another question, but I'm not following the chat, so maybe Vero, do you know which one was that? I see. Sorry,
yeah. You see,
I see.
Tonya said, "Do we still need? I still need to know. Should we be filling out this questionnaire if it's right, under security watch?"
So yes, thank you, Tonya. I completely forgot about this. So for the duty stations which are under security watch, the only parts of the questionnaire need to be filled out, namely the section which deals only with the security issues, and that section will not be filled out by the WHO or by UNFPA. It will go to the DSS, local DSS. So only local DSS will fill out that questionnaire that still needs to be sent by the UNRC. Having said that, a good practice would be that UNRC informs all of the UN agencies saying, our duty station is on the watch list. This means that only questions, and I believe, I don't remember the range of those questions, but it's only 20 questions or so, will be filled out. This is the task of the DSS. DSS, please share with us the draft by this and this date, disseminate it to all of the agencies. UN agencies just need to review that with the understanding that DSS has the best understanding of the security concerns, and then validate it and signed off by the regional coordinator. So if it's security watch, it's only security section that needs to be filled out. No other sections needs to be filled out. I see also there's a question from Igor about the weight of the pollution and climate and environment. So we don't have the actual methodology how the Commission defines. So we can't say, is it like 10%, 20%, 50%, and so on and so forth. We don't have the formula behind which the Commission calculates the weight of each one. From our experience of being present at those sessions and to which extent the deliberations take place. And that's, again, that's purely my personal opinion here. So please don't take it as an official position of FICSA. I'm giving you my personal view as having attended these sessions and also having completed these questionnaires, that all sections are taken in very serious consideration. The section on health and security are slightly more scrutinized. However, if you can relate the level of air pollution as a critical element that severely undermines the quality of life, then of course it may easily outweigh the issue that that everything is safe there, that there are no manifestations, that there are no active war, but you have 25 nuclear stations that are about to blow up. Of course, in this case, the Commission will completely disregard the security element, but will seriously regard the air pollution as being critical, and you may be as well classified as duty station DOE, for instance. Kenneth, So I'm not sure whether. And are there any questions in relation to the survey that we can advise on the technical matters? I would rather, for the time being, not comment on what we should and should not do with the Commission, given that this most probably should be in a different forum. Here, I would like to concentrate for the time being purely on existing methodology and on existing rules, understanding that, of course, they're not perfect, but we have to operate with what we have for the time being, recognizing that there is a room for improvement.
Yeah, and if I may, Sasha,
Yes,
by
please.
experience being sitting in those tripartite working group sessions for in November for a little bit more than 10 years. When we meet in New York around the table with the ICSC, the UN organizations with staff deployed in the regions, in the field, outside in the field, there are some discussions, and we do come sometimes to an agreement that the original estimate of duty stations are made by the SCSC and presented to the tripartite working group. We do manage sometimes to change it because we know, because we have information, so we're able to share that information. We say, sorry, we have heard from, we got inside information from our staff who are deployed in that this is not what we are describing. Or sometimes even I remember recently we were talking about Fiji, and everybody thinks it's a rosy place and it's extremely super easy to live there. But we had a report. Actually, we were connected to a UNDP colleague who was deployed there and had extreme severe health problems, and she had to be evacuated. The diagnostics was wrong. I mean, she told us all her horror story, and we were able to decide that no, Fiji is not A, it's B. So we do have that flexibility. As Sasha was mentioning, the methodology is not perfect, and there has been reviews about it. But sometimes what is difficult for you might not be difficult for your neighbor. So it's also a little bit subjective too. So that's why it cannot never going to be a perfect situation. So it's a tricky questionnaire, and that's why Sasha was explaining it's important to take it seriously and do it properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And one last piece of information before we conclude. Please do refer to the email that Secretariat disseminated earlier today to all of the members, outlining and actually attaching the memo that was disseminated by the Commission to the RCs, so you can already see a comprehensive list of which station is under which classification, briefly outlining different methodologies as well as links to available resources. And then between now and the 10th of August, we are here to support you. So on this note, thank you very much. Handing over to Irvan to close this meeting, unless there are any other critical issues that we would like to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shasha and Vero. I think we have come to the end of our allocated time, but if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to write to the FICSA Secretariat. And also, I have put in the chat the communication that we sent today regarding this round of the hardship classification. So please refer to that communication, and don't hesitate to get in touch with FICSA for the questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and thank you so much, Shasha and Vero, for the presentation.
Thank you.
Bye. All the best.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Good presentation. Thank you.